Well, guys, Dana White confirmed that last night was, in fact, the last time we'll see Anderson Silva in the octagon. We're talking about that fight and his historic career right now. What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
Happy Halloween, everybody. We hope you guys all enjoyed the holiday. You got some good candy, did some trick-or-treating. I know we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had to rush back to make the fights.
Right.
But we were on Uncle Squad duty, taking our nephew out.
Yeah, we had to actually pause the fights. So
Yeah,
we were a little delayed. Couldn't check social media.
Exactly. I almost made that mistake. That's
Yeah.
a crucial error when you're not watching fights
Yeah.
live, but I caught myself right before I did it.
Yeah. I was able to refrain, but usually it's just like a force of habit. So you just get in and like go scroll Instagram. And since we follow all kinds of MMA stuff and fighters, and that's usually the top of my news feed. So I'm glad I was able to stay away.
Yeah, our feeds are almost exclusively MMA stuff, so you don't want to get caught with that. But yeah, so talking about the main event, this was Anderson Silva's last fight in the UFC. Everybody kind of expected that.
Right.
Dana White came out and confirmed that it was, in fact, his last fight. 45 years old, storied career. Sad to see him go out on a loss. In a fight, I quite frankly thought he was winning the fight up until he got a little lazy and got caught coming in.
Yeah, and if anybody needed a lesson and to see where like the sport goes and how it leaves anybody, you can be the GOAT. Anderson Silva is known by everybody around the world as one of the GOATs, and he's
certainly in the discussion.
Yeah, on the UFC's Mount Rushmore, he's an absolute legend of the sport. And even he can't skate by, doing what Khabib did with like an undefeated record or leaving on top, sailing off into the sunset. But I think it was a great performance for a last performance. And he was saying all week that it was his last performance in the UFC and still kind of hinting that he might compete again. And trust me, there's going to be a lot of promoters that don't care what Dana White said and don't care about Anderson Silva's health as a 45-year-old man that want to see him compete in their promotion and in their business. But if you ask me, I think we've seen enough Anderson Silva, and he's able to, utilize his name and utilize his brand that he's made off of fighting to move into the next chapter of his life.
I agree with that. If that was the last time we ever see him fight, period, certainly is the last we'll see him in the octagon.
Right.
And I trust that Dana is being truthful when he says that
for
100%. But
if you watch what he said, he felt horrible that he let Anderson get in the octagon just last night. But, he agreed to do that with Anderson. He said, Anderson, I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain. They have one fight left on his contract, but he said he'll never let him fight that last fight.
Yeah, and I think that's the right call.
Yeah.
But in free agency, as you said, Anderson is going to have a lot of suitors.
Right.
Bellator is known for picking up past their prime UFC fighters and allowing them to continue. And in a lot of ways, they try to build some of their younger fighters off of them. You have one championship out of Asia. And one thing we know is that the Asian market absolutely reveres and respects the old school martial artists, people that like Demetrius Johnson now over there, Eddie Alvarez, Anderson Silva would be a name I'm sure they would love to have. And I think that they would probably pick fights for him that would be exciting and a little bit more competitive than he's going to get at the top of the heap in the UFC.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the fight specifically, because I personally thought that he was winning rounds, if not winning the fight, when it was ultimately stopped.
Well, you were seeing the right thing. He was absolutely winning the fight. He was clearly the better striker, all around the better fighter than Urijah Hall. There's just a thing that happens when you fight, and you fight as many times as he has, and you leave a little piece of you every time you're in the octagon. And he's had some wars. He's taken some heavy shots from some heavy-handed people. Izzy Adesanya, Daniel Cormier. The list of fighters that he's gone through and the list of fighters he's fought and taken shots from is crazy. And his chin's just deteriorated. He's a 45-year-old man. He's not the same Anderson Silva that he was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's just time catches all of us, and it caught him. And Urijah Hall got lucky with that. I mean, in my opinion, he was losing every minute of that fight for the most part. And was very gun-shy, was not trying to get off any shots, it almost seemed like. And I think that when he finally did land the shot, it put him out. It put Silva out because his chin's just so weak right now.
Yeah, and it's the shot that we talk about a lot on this channel, which is that sort of running in, lazy with your hands down and your chin up sort of situation. It's the Fabricio Verdum, Stipe Miocic. It's, Anderson was leaning, he was rushing, and when you give an opponent, especially one as physically strong as Urijah Hall is, the momentum, all they got to do is just hit you in the right place and it's over. But I honestly was not incredibly impressed by Urijah Hall's performance, if I'm being totally honest. He did seem a little gun-shy. I know he talked about how Anderson Silva was his idol growing up, and it is very difficult to have to knock out and try to beat up your idol. So I get that part of it. But he's in there saying, I knocked out Silva, which is something that Adesanya wasn't able to do. I want to work my way up to a title shot. I think after last night, I'm getting myself in title contention. I would just pump the brakes on that a little bit because Urijah Hall showed us last night that he's a top 10 185er. He didn't show us that he's ready for the top 5 at 185 in my estimation.
Absolutely not. His stock didn't rise in this fight that much, if any. I thought Anderson Silva looked twice as good as him. He looked twice as fast as he did. And if he wasn't quite as old, he still has some of the best striking in the UFC. The way he was moving, he did get a little sloppy when he got caught, but up until then, he looked pretty sharp, especially for a 45-year-old man. Urijah Hall should have gotten him out of there a lot earlier. I also think that Izzy kind of got plagued by the same thing that Urijah Hall did, where they were in there and they're like just taking in the moment that they're fighting. They're big. They were some of Anderson Silva's biggest fans, clearly, and they loved him and they didn't want to hurt him. But all of that stuff can take place leading up to the fight. When you get in the octagon and he's actively trying to knock you out, you have to just throw all that stuff away and get the job done. And I felt like it took Urijah Hall way too long to do that. It took Izzy too long to do that. And I wanted to see Urijah come out and kind of make a statement and prove, because right now, 185, if you go look at the top 10, like I've said it before, we've agreed on this, Izzy Adesanya has beat almost all of the top 10 opponents, or the top 10 competitors. And it's not as the champion, but on his way to the championship, he was just beating some of these guys. And now that he's at the top, you look at the top 5, you go, oh, well, there's, a couple people have their dance partners already. And then he's beat all the other ones. And the one guy who is most deserving, Robert Whittaker, isn't really calling for the fight. So if Urijah Hall can make a great statement against Anderson Silva, the name is going to help him, and the masses might see it on Halloween. I think this could be the guy that they might try to leapfrog over a bunch of people, but this performance didn't win him a leapfrogging opportunity.
I agree, and it was sort of one of those opportunities that was ripe for the taking because, as you said, everybody's talking about, and now it was confirmed after in the press conference that he's actually going to do what I predicted prior, which is to move up to light heavyweight, and compete against Jan Blachowicz. But if it was one of those things where Urijah Hall came out and made a statement type of win, they're talking about him as far as, who might be next if Izzy is going to compete at 185 and get your name in the mix and get people talking about you and being excited to possibly see you against Izzy. Got the job done last night. As far as winning the fight, I don't think he got the job done as far as raising his stock and getting into the Izzy Adesanya sweepstakes discussion.
Didn't. Yeah, the right move for Izzy right now is to go up, fight Jan Blachowicz. I think that's a good matchup for him. I think that Jan's going to be a tough fight. Tougher than a lot of people.
Tougher than Costa, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think that it's going to be tougher than a lot of people are going to realize. I do believe that Izzy goes into this a favorite and maybe a little higher than most people would, agree with. Yeah. But I think he's earned that right. Jan's a new champion, but he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. Anytime a younger champion comes up to compete against an older one and they get called the favorite, it kind of lights a fire under the...
Especially if the younger one is a lighter weight class coming up as well.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. If a guy's coming up and they're considered the favorite... But I think it's going to be a fun fight, and he could wait around to see who wins between Darren Till and Jack Hermansson. But I see Izzy being able to compete at both weight classes. He doesn't have to cut weight to get to 185. Essentially, he'll have to probably eat a little extra to make 205 or right around that 200-pound mark. And I think it's just a good move on his part. If the UFC sees it as a champ moment, they're going to be able to potentially crown him with the double, and then he can do what Amanda Nunes does, where he's defending actively 2 belts, which they wanted to see out of Conor McGregor. They've wanted to see it out of a couple of other guys, Henry Cejudo, but it's very hard for somebody to actually do it. This seems like one of those opportunities where the UFC is going to take that chance because they could see him bouncing back and forth between 185 and 205.
Yeah, absolutely. And back to Silva, who also bounced around between 185 and 205 in his career. You know, when you talk about the great career that he had, you talk about, you know, the statistics and the records, the 2,400 plus days. I think it's 2,457, if I remember correctly, days that he held the middleweight belt in the UFC. It was over 16 fights. 2006 to 2013.
Incredible.
And you talk about the old generation of the UFC who he beat: Rich Franklin, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Chris Lieben, Talis Latis, Forrest Griffin.
He beat them all.
The list goes on. Yushin Okami. The list goes on and on. Talk about Anderson's career and sort of where you see him. Because I know we just kind of did a breakdown video on Khabib and his retirement and the true perfection that was his career. Where do you rank Anderson among the GOATs? You know, you do have the USADA infraction for the tainted supplement thing in 2017, and that always, you know, just puts a little bit of an asterisk next to a GOAT status. Although I don't think that was the highest level of infraction as far as what we've seen.
Yeah.
But what do you
I think he was playing the game at that opportunity, you know, and everybody kind of was. And I think there's still a lot of people that are involved in that, the dirty side of MMA, but it's sports in general. But one thing that we talk about all the time is the GOAT conversation. Who's the greatest? Who's the best at the time? Who's pound for pound number one? Anderson obviously deserves a seat at the table, and if we're going no blemishes on your record, then we obviously are left with George St. Pierre, Khabib, DJ, Henry Cejudo, Daniel Cormier. Those are kind of like the top 5 no blemishes. You got to add John Jones in. You got to add Anderson Silva when you bring in the rest of the bunch. But what I would say is he might go down in history as the most innovative fighter that the UFC's ever seen to date, and what he did was he showcased next level striking at a time where it didn't exist.
Right.
And he inspired so many young kids that maybe would have gone into a different field or maybe not have tried MMA to try it out. And they were blown away by what he was doing with his body, how he was taking these guys out. He was like a true like a true warrior almost.
Yeah. He's a martial artist in every sense of the word.
Right. And the bowing and the way he was respectful all the time, and he was able to sell fights. He had the total package. He had that it factor. The Anderson, the Spider Silva. There's just something. The name rings well, and the way he was finishing people, and the
Ain't No Sunshine walkout song. Yeah, it was something around him.
Everything worked with him, and he had the distance management that made some of the slips and counters look so cool. But what he did was he showed the next generation what their potential could be.
Yeah.
And now you see it. You can't watch Izzy Adesanya fight and not see some bits of Anderson Silva. You can't see even Conor McGregor, see him fight and not think, oh man, that looks like old school Silva. So what he did, it was innovative. It was ahead of his time. He was next level. Even still looks a step ahead of most people in the game. And I'm not going to say he's the GOAT. He's definitely in the conversation, in my opinion. Top 10 fighters the UFC's ever had. But I will put him down as one of the most innovative fighters of all time, period.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, especially about the generation that's coming up, because I don't think a lot of people realize, the newer fans at least, that there probably wouldn't be an Israel Adesanya if there never was an Anderson Silva.
Yeah.
There may not have been, like you said, a Conor McGregor, somebody who embraces all styles. When you think about Izzy's style and how you see great just traditional kickboxing techniques, but then you see these taekwondo and these karate style kicks and stances thrown in there. You certainly see a wide karate based stance from Conor a lot of times. Anderson Silva really paved the way for the Israel Adesanyas, the Conor McGregors. When you talk about his accomplishments, not just, obviously the Shooto world champion, belt holder, the UFC champion for 16 fights, but then you talk about he's a 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo. He's a 3rd degree black belt under the Nogueira brothers in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has the certain distinction in Muay Thai, one of the highest level distinctions in Muay Thai. He's I believe it's a yellow rope in Capoeira. I'm not even really sure what that means, but he's sought out and practiced to the point of accomplishment, various levels of accomplishment in many disciplines of martial arts, and he mixes them together. Hence the name and term mixed martial arts. And he truly did that at a time where not as many people were doing that. You saw a lot more specialists back in those days than you see now. Pretty much everybody's well-rounded. And I think a lot of that has to do with Silva showing them that how are you going to beat a guy who's at the highest levels of Muay Thai, but he also can submit you on the ground off his back, as we saw against Chael Sonnen. He's black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. You got the Taekwondo. There was some discussion about him fighting in the Olympics for Brazil in Taekwondo at some point. He's got a pro boxing record. He's 1-1 in pro boxing. So he really did pave the way for the next generation. For sure. And I think that's how, I don't think he goes down as being remembered as the greatest fighter of all time, but I certainly think he goes down as one of the most innovative and one of the most inspiring fighters that helped build generations thereafter.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the greatest of his time without a doubt. And, he stayed around a little too long, and that might have tarnished his record or the memories of people that people have of him. But you can't take anything away from him. What he did was truly amazing. He showcased that he was, like you said, he's able to submit. He's able to show high-level striking. He's able to defend some wrestling against people that came in with strict wrestling takedowns and stuff like that. So when it comes to mixing martial arts, he was one of the first to do that. He has to get recognized as that. And I think everybody that fights and everybody that is looking to fight has a little bit of something that they took from Anderson Silva, and they learned from him. And if you're a super young fighter, if you're really, really young and you missed the entire Spider era, then you might have to go back to the UFC Hall of the classic films.
Go back, subscribe to UFC Fight Pass and go check him out. But the thing that always amazed me about Anderson was his ability to be out of range when his opponent thought he was in range, and then be in range to strike his opponent when his opponent thought he was out of range. And you just saw the Matrix-like striking from him, hands down, just slipping shots, almost like Muhammad Ali back in the day, with just ease, and then boom, make you pay for it. And then when you look for him again, he's gone. And then he's got you in a tie clinch, and boom, there goes a knee. He knocked out a lot of people with just brutal Muay Thai. And I believe that's how he won the belt, actually, if I'm not mistaken. But,
and something that he did it's fresh on my mind, so that's why I'm going to make the comparison, is the pressure that he puts on his opponent when he's fighting and when they're on the feet and they're standing up is very similar to the pressure that Khabib was putting on Justin Gaethje on the feet. He's all over you, and obviously he's looking to take you down. Silva, not exactly looking to take you down from those positions, but he's looking to make you feel like you're in the middle of a storm and like a tornado, and you don't know what, he's got everything. His arms are flailing, his head's moving around in a crazy,
he's doing all that, distraction.
But that stuff is very, it's very, calculated and planned out, and the way he puts pressure on you is unlike anybody else. Khabib looks similar to that, not quite as fluid in the striking, but it's a similar thing in that you have somebody on their back foot and they just can't seem to catch a breath of air, and I think that's very impressive. I think a lot of fighters could learn a lot from what Anderson Silva's X's and O's performance from last night against Uriah Hall. I think even though he lost and he didn't look quite like the old Silva, he still looked like a high-level person that you can take a lot of stuff from.
which you really can't say about almost anybody at 45.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we saw Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell fight, and they're around that age, and it was a disaster, to say the least.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, to see somebody who's in their mid-40s compete against an absolute physical monster like Uriah Hall and win every second of the fight except for the second that he got put on the ground and finished in the 4th round is pretty amazing, actually. So, you know, when we're partial to Silva because when we started becoming fans of MMA and training jiu-jitsu and training boxing and Muay Thai, he was the guy. You know, the first live event we ever went to was for your birthday. We went to Vegas and we saw Nick Diaz versus Anderson Silva, and that just was like 2015. That's what hooked us. We were already in, but that just that just pulled us in and locked the door behind us. You know what I mean? So for that reason, I'll always remember Anderson in a good light. I think that he exemplifies what a martial artist is. And, you know, I would like to see him call it a career, maybe with the exception of, I always thought Anderson would go out either in his hometown, but certainly in Brazil with a crowd in front of him. So maybe there's a fight they make for him in some other organization where he can do it in Brazil. He can do it around his friends and family and people that he's trained with and people that he's mentored and give him one more fight. But if that doesn't happen, what a career.
Yeah, he's already done enough for us. I don't need to see him do it again. And MMA is different than boxing in the sense that if a boxer retires or should retire and then comes back for one more, a swan song, they'll give him some guy that was cleaning the arena the night before, and he'll kick his ass or, put him down. Sorry about that. He'll put him down. And
I think the 3-letter words are okay. I think it's just the 4 letters.
Well,
if I'm not mistaken, but we can beep that out if not.
Yeah, well, you know, the cussing, I try to stay away from the cussing, even though sometimes I get a little jazzed up.
We know you got some young fans out there, so we love you guys too. So
kid show. But MMA is different like that. Yeah, 99% of fighters, no matter what level you reach in MMA, you wind up face down. You wind up bloody nose, broken, beat down, but not out. And that's the thing that I love about the sport. And it's a shame that a younger fighter wasn't able to propel themselves off of Silva quite as well as people probably would have wanted to. You know, the UFC loves to build off big names. Silva didn't give him that many opportunities because he was just so competitive all the way to the very end. But I see him having a very successful next chapter of his life, and I can't wait to see what he does next.
Yep, absolutely. And what you said about getting embarrassed, and that's the way everybody leaves the sport. In the words of his former foe, Chael Sonnen, there's one way out of this thing, and it's face down and embarrassed on the mat.
Right.
So, I think probably old Chael could give his stamp of approval for the end of an amazing career.
Absolutely.
But, guys, thanks for watching the video. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Check us out where you listen to podcasts. We do an audio-only version of this when you're driving in your car. Yeah. If you're in traffic, pop on the brothers.
Yeah, don't watch YouTube while you're driving, but we definitely want you to hear us.
That's for sure. Have a great day, guys. Talk to you later.
Peace.